I'm usually very good at minding my business. In fact, I consider it one of my greatest talents, which is why, the moment I spotted two enormous men dragging a terrified woman toward a black SUV, I immediately stopped minding my business. The woman looked seconds away from fainting. "What is happening here?" I called out. The two men stopped and turned toward me. Neither answered. The woman tried to pull free, but it was hopeless. One of the men tightened his grip around her arm. I asked a question, I demanded. One of the men sighed, as though I were the biggest inconvenience in his evening. "Go about your night, miss. This isn't something you want to get involved in." I folded my arms. "Well, from where I'm standing, it looks very much like you're kidnapping a woman." "We are not kidnapping her." The woman let out a frightened whimper. That statement wasn't helping their case. Before I could say anything else, they bundled her into the SUV. The panic rolling off her was so intense, I could practically feel it in the air. I took another step closer, and that's when I saw him. For a second, my brain completely forgot what it was doing. A man sat in the back seat, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His face was unfairly handsome, as though God had gotten bored one afternoon and decided to show off. Unfortunately, his expression suggested he was considering several creative ways to dispose of my body. His dark eyes locked onto mine. His glare could have made a grown man flee, but not me. He looked as though I'd personally ruined his evening. Maybe I'd interrupted an important meeting. Maybe I'd delayed a murder. Honestly, with men dressed like this, either seemed possible. Then he spoke. His voice was deep and smooth, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who was used to being obeyed. Most people probably would have backed away. Most people probably would have apologized. Most people were considerably smarter than me. Unfortunately for him, I don't scare easily. He stared me dead in the eyes. "You're stopping a wedding." I stared back, completely unperturbed. This looks more like an abduction. My gaze fell on the woman, who was now crying harder. The man sighed. "Do you know who I am? Someone who bullies people when they don't do what you want?" He smiled as though I'd just told him a joke. "Well, we had a deal. We get married for 1 year. In exchange, she gets $500,000. "Just let me go," the woman pleaded. "Pay me back every dime, and I'll think about it." Her sobs grew louder. I frowned. "Fine, I'll pay you the $500,000. Let her go." "It's not that simple. You're just being difficult." His smirk returned. "I still need a bride." His gaze settled on me. I glanced at the crying woman, then back at him. My mouth moved faster than my brain. "I'll be your bride." Silence. Even the crying woman stopped. The man stared at me. I stared back. Then it hit me. Oh no. I'd just volunteered to marry a complete stranger. A very handsome stranger, admittedly, but still a stranger. And judging by the expensive tuxedo, the terrifying bodyguards, and the fact that he'd just bought himself a bride, probably a dangerous one. Dangerous men had always been my weakness. I sighed. I'm screwed. You just agreed to marry someone you barely know. His eyes narrowed. You're either stupid, a pause, or just plain crazy. I nodded, my head reeling from what I'd just agreed to. "Let her go," I commanded. He stared at me for a brief second. This was a man who looked like he never took orders from anyone. Surprisingly, he nodded to his men. They immediately released the tear-streaked woman. "Thank you," she whispered in my direction. Then the moment her feet touched the ground, she bolted. I watched the woman disappear around the corner. Then I slowly turned back. Every pair of eyes was now on me. The Mafia Boss, his bodyguards, and me, the idiot who had just volunteered to marry him. "Well," I said, "this is awkward." His gaze remained fixed on me, as though he were trying to figure out exactly who or what I was. An hour later, I was sitting in a private room with both our lawyers and 2 witnesses, signing a marriage contract. I still wasn't entirely sure how I'd gotten there. One minute, I'd been trying to stop a kidnapping. The next, I was signing paperwork to become a mafia boss's wife. And then, somehow, we were officially husband and wife. Thankfully, there was no kissing involved. That part was a relief. I'd only met the man a few hours ago, and I was a virgin. He couldn't know that, of course. I wasn't about to announce it to my brand new husband. The council didn't know. My pack didn't know. Not even my best friend knew that I had become Mrs. Aziza Blackwood, the wife of London's most dangerous mafia boss, Adrian Blackwood. Shortly after, we arrived at Blackwood Estate. It was bigger and more modern than the century-old house I'd shared with my pride. The house manager showed me to my room. It was massive. My chambers at the castle was large, but this one could fit a bed, a walk-in closet, a shoe display shelf, a bookshelf, and still have enough space for a home cinema. It was insane. By dinner, Adrian was still dressed in his tuxedo, looking as serious as ever. He glanced at the food in front of him with obvious disinterest. I, on the other hand, was already enjoying my 4th bite of apple pie when he finally spoke. "We're married for 1 year. That's it." He didn't blink. "You won't interfere in my business." "Wonderful." I took another bite. "You don't interfere in mine either." Adrian's expression didn't change. Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, stood, and walked away to take the call. I watched him disappear. Then I looked down at my pie. This was going to be interesting. The next morning, I was already in the gym, lifting weights that should have been far too heavy for my 5'4" frame without breaking a sweat. Then I moved to the punching bag. I smelled him before he even entered. That expensive suit smell, mixed with leather and spicy cologne, made me slow for half a second. The door opened. I kept hitting the punching bag. Adrian swaggered in, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "I didn't know if you'd prefer tea or coffee, but I guess you'd be a coffee kind of woman." He lifted both mugs in the air in my direction. "Sorry to disappoint you. I'm neither a coffee or tea girl." "Really? Yeah. Give me water and I'm good." He nodded, then observed as I punched the bags. "Do you always wake up at 5 in the morning to work out?" "Every morning." "Why?" I finally turned to look at him. He stood there in his perfectly tailored suit, still holding both mugs. I raised an eyebrow. "No mafia business today?" His mouth twitched. "There's always mafia business." "Then why are you here? Curiosity?" I shook my head. "Now, look who's not staying out of my business." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then his mouth curved into a faint smile. "Training for anything in particular?" His eyes followed my fists as I punched harder and faster, watching every movement. I glanced at him. "Are you always this nosy before breakfast?" "Only when I'm curious." "That's unfortunate." I turned back to the punching bag. "You're going to be curious for a very long time." By the time I left Blackwood Estate, Adrian had already gone to work. My pride had been expecting me for hours. The moment I stepped through the castle doors, my second in command was waiting for me. "You're late," Amara said. I glanced at her. "Good morning to you too." She rolled her eyes. "You're married now. I expected you'd be too busy being a mafia wife to remember the rest of us." I nearly choked. "How did you know? It was supposed to be a secret." Amara scoffed. "News like that travels fast." I shook my head. "It's been less than 24 hours. "I'm not surprised," she replied. I walked past her. "And what's the emergency?" The amusement immediately disappeared from Amara's face. "The eastern boundary." I stopped. "What happened?" "We found 3 men crossing it again last night," she said. "Again?" Amara nodded. "They're from the Black Ridge Pride." My expression hardened. "They've been warned." "Twice." I turned to her. "And they ignored us?" "They ignored the warning." I sighed. "Of course they did." Amara followed me into the council room, where 3 members of my pride were already waiting. I took my usual seat at the head of the table. "What do they want?" I asked. "Land, apparently." One of the men pushed a folder toward me. "They've started moving their boundary markers farther into our territory." I opened the folder. Photographs. 3 markers. All moved. My jaw tightened. "They're testing us." "That's what we think," one of the men replied. I looked around the table. "And what do you think we should do?" Silence. I raised an eyebrow. Amara leaned back in her chair. "You're the alpha." "Yes." "You're supposed to tell us what to do." I gave her a look. "I could." I closed the folder. "But I'd rather hear if any of you have useful ideas first." One of the younger members cleared his throat. "We could move the markers back." I stared at him. "That's your plan?" He shrugged. "It seemed like a good start." A laugh escaped me. "Fine. Move them back." His eyebrows shot up. "That's it?" I pushed my chair back and stood. "No." I picked up the folder. "Send word to Black Ridge. Tell them if they cross our boundary again, I'll come to them personally." Amara smiled. "That's a threat." I headed for the door. "No." I glanced back at her. "That's a promise." The room fell silent. I rested my hand on the door. "Anything else?" "Actually," Amara hesitated. I closed my eyes. "There's always something else." She smiled sweetly. "The council wants you at the meeting tomorrow." I groaned. "Absolutely not." "Aziza," Amara warned, "they can send me a letter." Amara's smile faded. "They want to discuss your marriage." I froze. "Of course they do." She sighed. "So you're married to a mafia boss?" Her gaze drifted over me. "I don't know if I should be scared for him," I chuckled. "He'll be fine." Amara gave me a knowing look. "Humans are unpredictable." I shook my head. "Don't worry about me, Amara. I can handle myself." "I know, Alpha." A small smile tugged at her lips. "Just try to stay alive for a year," Amara said, her voice edged with concern. "Your attraction to dangerous men could end up being deadly." I raised an eyebrow. "Then I guess this is going to be a fantastic year." I grinned. Amara stared after me. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of." Adrian was already back at Blackwood Estate when I returned. He was sitting in the library working on his laptop. He looked up. "Where have you been?" I continued towards my bedroom. "Aziza?" I didn't respond. His voice hardened slightly. "I asked you where you've been." I finally turned to look at him. "You made the rule, Adrian." His expression tightened. "What rule?" "That we don't interfere in each other's business." I reached the end of the sitting room. "So I'm respecting your wishes." Silence fell between us. "That's not what I meant." I folded my arms. "Then what did you mean?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "In my world, people target those closest to me." That made me pause. He stepped closer. "If someone knows where you are, who you're with, what you're doing, I can handle myself." "Never said you can't." He looked genuinely concerned. My eyebrows lifted. "Then what's the problem?" "You're my wife." That made me freeze. That was the first time he'd ever referred to me as his wife. Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. I immediately pushed the feeling away. This was a contract, nothing more. So I reminded him. "For 1 year," I said, "we signed a contract so you could get that business deal. Let's not pretend this is a real marriage." His eyes narrowed. "I'm still your husband and don't want to find out you've been kidnapped." I blinked. Then I turned fully. "Well," I studied him. "That's almost sweet." I pressed a hand dramatically to my chest. Who knew the Mafia Lord could be romantic? I fluttered my eyelashes at him. "Definitely not." He turned and quickly walked away. I watched him go and couldn't help but chuckle. Definitely romantic, just in denial. That evening, I set the table and gave the cook the night off, with a promise she'd still be paid. Don't ask me why. I'd never cooked for a man in my life. So, honestly, I was just as surprised as everyone else. Let's just say I wanted to return the favour. Adrian had thought about me that morning when he'd brought me coffee. And after our conversation earlier, I felt a little guilty. He hadn't been trying to control me. He'd been concerned. So I walked into his ridiculously fancy kitchen and made Nigerian jollof rice. By the time Adrian was done working in his home office, everything was ready. He stepped into the kitchen and stopped, his eyebrows lifted in surprise and confusion. I flashed him a warm smile. "Don't look so shocked." His gaze moved from me to the table. "Did you cook?" "No, the food magically prepared itself." He shook his head, amused. A few minutes later, we were sitting across from each other at the dining table. I watched Adrian take his first bite, then another and another. By the time I finished eating, I looked down at his plate. Empty. Completely empty. I blinked. For the first time since I'd arrived at Blackwood Estate, Adrian Blackwood had actually finished every bite of his dinner. My eyes twinkled with excitement. "Wow." He glanced at me. "That good, huh?" I teased. "It's decent," he muttered. I stared at his empty plate. "Decent?" I scoffed. "You cleaned your plate?" He leaned back slightly, a small smile tugging at his lips. "So, this is what Nigerians enjoy?" "Among other things. And I've been sitting here every evening eating bland, boring food?" I gasped dramatically. "Are you insulting the cook?" "No, because I like her. That's not what I said." I grinned. "Don't worry, there's more where that came from." For a moment he simply looked at me. Then he picked up his napkin and wiped his mouth. The playful expression disappeared. "The man who offered me the business deal wants to meet us." My smile faded. "Why?" "To see if we're actually married." I nodded slowly. That made sense. Then Adrian reached into his pocket and placed a sleek black card on the table between us. I stared at it. "What is that?" "Go shopping." He gave me a look, as though that explained everything. "Get something suitable to wear?" I glanced down at the card again. "You're sending me shopping?" "Yes." He said it without even batting an eyelash. "Why?" "Because apparently we're going to convince this man that we're happily married." I picked up the card between two fingers. "And you think a dress is going to do that?" "No." His gaze met mine. "But it might help." I stared at him, then slowly smiled. "Adrian." "What?" "You do realize I could spend an obscene amount of money with this, right?" His expression didn't change. "You're my wife now. Do with it as you please." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Adrian stood and straightened his jacket. "Thanks for dinner." And just like that, he walked away. I looked down at the black card in my hand, then at the doorway he'd disappeared through. Well, that was unexpected. The next afternoon, I walked into one of London's most expensive boutiques with Adrian's black card in my bag. I had absolutely no intention of spending a fortune. I wasn't even sure I wanted to spend his money at all. I was only here because apparently convincing a wealthy businessman that we were happily married required me to look the part. Personally, I thought signing a marriage contract less than 48 hours ago should have been enough. Apparently not. I approached the nearest sales assistant. "Hi, I'm looking for something elegant. Nothing too dramatic," I said. She smiled politely. "Of course. What size?" I told her. She gestured toward the racks. "Feel free to have a look around. I'll be right over here if you need any assistance." Perfect. Exactly how I liked it. No fuss. No unnecessary attention. I wandered through the boutique, running my fingers over the fabrics. Everything was beautiful and ridiculously expensive. I picked up a dress and checked the price tag. Absolutely not. I could easily afford it, but there was no way I was spending that much on one dress. I found another, elegant, simple, and only slightly less offensive to my bank account. 20 minutes later, I walked out of the fitting room wearing it. The sales assistant smiled. "That's lovely on you." I studied myself in the mirror. Really? Very, she replied. I smiled. Then I'll take it. She led me to the counter. I reached into my bag for my bank card and accidentally pulled Adrian's black card out with it. It landed on the counter. The sales assistant froze. Her eyes dropped to the card, then slowly lifted back to me. Mrs. Blackwood? I blinked. Yes? Her entire posture changed. Mrs. Blackwood? Yes, that's still me. She smiled. Of course. I frowned. Is there a problem? No problem at all, she quickly assured me. Then she gestured toward a velvet chair. Please sit. I stared at her. Why? Would you like something to drink? No. Champagne? No. Tea? No. Coffee? Water. Still or sparkling? I gave her a strange look. Water is water. She hesitated. Still then. Good. She hurried away. I watched her go. What the hell was happening? A minute later, another sales assistant appeared. Mrs. Blackwood, I understand you're looking for something for an upcoming event. Yes. Would you like me to select a few options for you? I'm perfectly capable of selecting my own dress. Of course. She smiled. Perhaps you'd like to see our private collection? Or our VIP room, if you'd prefer some privacy. I stared at her. 5 minutes ago, nobody cared what I bought. Her smile became painfully polite. Mr. Blackwood is a very valued client. I slowly held up the black card. Apparently, the first sales assistant returned with my water. She placed it carefully in front of me. Would you like to see anything else? I shook my head. I came here for one dress. Of course, and I'm leaving with one dress. Certainly. I narrowed my eyes. You're not going to convince me to buy 6 more, are you? The two women exchanged a glance. Of course not, Mrs. Blackwood, the first sales assistant assured me. I didn't believe her. Not for 1 second. I picked up my water. Then I remembered Adrian's words. You're my wife now. Do with it as you please. Well, apparently, being Mrs. Blackwood came with its own set of privileges. Adrian was already home when I returned. He noticed the shopping bags in my hands. You bought the entire boutique? I dropped into a chair. 1 dress. His eyes moved to the number of bags. And the shoes? Those don't count. He let out a quiet laugh. You know, the manager of the boutique called. I looked up. Why? He told me you're the first woman he's ever met who didn't buy the entire store with a black card. I stared at him. Okay, I said slowly. One corner of his mouth lifted. He also told me you tried to pay with your own card. I shook my head. That man has a big mouth. That's adorable, Aziza. I gave him a tired look. Glad I could entertain you? The amusement faded from his face. They're coming tonight, I yawned. Mr. Richard, the man behind the business deal? He nodded. And his wife? I nodded back. Right. Adrian watched me. Try to look like you actually enjoy being married to me. I raised an eyebrow. And try to act like you actually enjoy being married to me, I shot back. One corner of his mouth twitched. That's going to be difficult, he teased. I grabbed one of the shopping bags. Then I suggest you start practicing. By 7 that evening, I was dressed in the new dress I'd bought earlier. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing my hands over the fabric. It was blue, elegant, and simple. The off-the-shoulder design showed off my toned arms, while the fabric hugged me in all the right places. Tasteful, perfect for the occasion. I walked downstairs just as the doorbell rang. Adrian was already waiting in the foyer. He turned and stopped. For a moment, his gaze moved slowly over me. I raised an eyebrow. What? His eyes immediately met mine. Nothing. You're staring. I wasn't. You were. Adrian's jaw tightened, just making sure the dress is appropriate. I rolled my eyes. Mr. Richard is here, I reminded him. He didn't even move toward the door. His eyes remained fixed on me. For a split second, interest flickered in them. Did I read that right? I quickly pushed the thought away. Get the door, Adrian. I started down the stairs. And don't forget to pick your jaw up off the floor. Right. He quickly headed for the door. You're acting strange, I called after him. He didn't answer. The door opened. Mr. Richard stepped inside with his wife, Emily, her arm wrapped around his. Richard was a distinguished man in his late 50s, dressed in an expensive dark suit. Emily was stylish and warm, and her face lit up when she saw me. Adrian. Richard? The two men shook hands. Then Richard's attention shifted to me. And you must be Aziza. I inclined my head. I am. He looked pleasantly surprised. Adrian didn't tell me you were so beautiful. I glanced at my husband. Adrian gave Richard a pointed look. Richard chuckled. I'm only stating the obvious. He shrugged. Emily let out a soft laugh. Don't mind him. He has a habit of speaking before thinking. Richard turned toward his wife. That's why I married you. You do enough thinking for both of us. I laughed. Adrian watched me. He said nothing. We moved into the dining room. Dinner began pleasantly enough. Richard was easy to talk to. Too easy, perhaps. He was here because of Adrian and the business deal, yet his attention kept drifting back to me. I couldn't understand why. Still, I answered his questions. It was only polite. Richard turned back to me. So, what do you do? A little bit of everything, I replied, keeping my eyes on Adrian. Richard raised an eyebrow. That's vague, I chuckled. Adrian absolutely loves me that way. I like to keep him on his toes. I gave my husband a playful wink. Adrian nearly choked on his water. Emily burst out laughing. I like her. Richard nodded in approval. Adrian's eyes met mine. I gave him an innocent look. He shook his head. You're an interesting woman, Aziza, Richard said. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. He leaned back in his chair. So, what made you agree to marry our friend here? Our friend? I sneaked a peek at Adrian over the rim of my wineglass. Richard's attention was beginning to make me curious, but I decided not to think too much about it. He's very persuasive, Richard laughed. I imagine he is. I think he threatened me. Aziza, Adrian's warning made me burst out laughing. I'm joking. Even Emily covered her mouth, trying not to smile. Richard grinned. Adrian, I've never seen you like this. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Like what? Relaxed? I am relaxed. His clipped response only made Richard chuckle. He turned back to me. So, Aziza, did you grow up in London? I opened my mouth to answer. She's had enough questions for one evening, Richard. The amusement vanished from Adrian's voice. Silence followed. I slowly turned toward him. Richard blinked. I meant no offence. I know. Adrian picked up his wineglass, his gaze still fixed on Richard. She's not here to entertain you? My eyebrows shot up. What was that about? I hadn't realised Richard's questions bothered him. Before I could think too much about it, my hand found Adrian's beneath the table. I gently squeezed it. Adrian glanced down at our joined hands, then back at me. The tension slowly left his shoulders. Emily's eyes flickered between us. I decided it was time to steer the conversation somewhere safer. I turned toward her. So, Emily, what do you do? She proudly told me she was the chairwoman of a charitable trust, and soon the conversation shifted to lighter topics. By the end of the night, they left us on a good note, bellies full and thoroughly entertained. The second the gate was closed, Adrian rounded on me. You loved that, didn't you? I frowned. What? All that attention Richard gave you, the compliments. I rolled my eyes. Don't be ridiculous, Adrian. He was just being nice. Nice? His expression tightened. His wife was beside him, and he barely even acknowledged her. I glared at him. I don't know what you want me to say. Nice dinner. I'm off to bed. I turned to leave. Aziza, don't you walk out on me. I kept walking. I was done with this childish nonsense. I signed a contract to be his wife, not his possession. Without another word, I stormed out. Thoughts of Adrian wouldn't let me sleep. I didn't understand what his problem was. One moment, he was telling me not to interfere in his business and keeping his distance. The next, he was acting like a man whose girlfriend was about to be snatched away by another man. I tossed the covers aside. Clearly, sleep wasn't happening tonight. I slipped out of bed in my silk nightdress and stepped onto the balcony. The cool night air hit my face, and I let out a small breath of relief. Below me, London was still alive. People moved along the streets, cars passed in the distance. It was 1 a.m, yet the city barely seemed to notice. Then a scent drifted toward me, soap, warm skin, and something distinctly masculine. My panther stirred inside me, suddenly alert, interested. I turned. Adrian stepped onto the balcony. My heart nearly stopped. His hair was tousled, as though he'd just woken up, yet somehow he still looked ridiculously handsome. Then my eyes drifted lower and stopped. He was shirtless. I swallowed. He was all hard angles and muscle, with not an ounce of softness anywhere. I should look away. I really should. But I couldn't. I'd never seen a human male half naked before. Adrian caught me staring, his mouth curved with amusement. Like what you see, wifey. I blinked, once, twice, but still didn't look away. I wasn't staring. Of course not. I ignored him. That's when I noticed them. The scars. My gaze settled on the jagged marks across his upper chest. My breath caught. Before I could think better of it, I crossed the space between us. I reached out and traced one of the scars with my fingertip. Adrian stiffened. The amusement vanished from his face. He gently caught my hand and lowered it. "What happened?" I asked. I looked straight into his blue eyes. There was genuine concern in my voice. "Nothing." His answer was too quick. Then he turned and walked back inside. I stood there staring after him. My gaze dropped to the hand he'd pushed away. Who had left those scars on London's most feared Mafia Boss? And why did I suddenly feel like I needed to know? As I turned away from the balcony, I smelled it. Gun oil, leather boots, men's cologne. Then my senses caught something else. Footsteps, light, careful. My panther snarled, at attention, ready to pounce. I moved quietly toward Adrian's room. He was asleep in bed, dressed in his pajamas. The moment I stepped inside, his eyes snapped open. He grabbed a gun on the dresser and pointed it directly at me. "It's me, Adrian," I whispered. He immediately shot out of bed. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "There are men in the building." His expression hardened. "How many?" "4," I whispered. Adrian immediately moved toward the east wing, one hand pressed to his earpiece. "Not there." He stopped. I listened. "I can hear them moving through the east and west wings," I said quickly. He turned to me. "How do you know that?" "We don't have time for this, Adrian." For a moment he stared at me. Then he nodded. He pressed his finger against his earpiece. "I want men at the east and west wings, now." "Yes, boss," his lieutenant responded. Adrian grabbed another gun and turned toward me. "Hide inside the closet. Don't come out until I say so." I raised an eyebrow. "I can handle myself, dear husband." His expression grew serious. "Aziza, now is not the time to joke." "Fine." I nodded. Adrian hurried away. I watched him disappear through the doorway, then I waited. 1 second, 2, 3, and the moment he was gone. I stepped out of the room. There was no way I was hiding in a closet while my husband walked into a gunfight. I followed the sound of movement through the corridor. Something caught my attention. I stopped. A flicker of movement. I looked up. My blood ran cold. A man stood on the rooftop across from us. A rifle rested against his shoulder, and the barrel was pointed directly at Adrian. My eyes widened. The 4 men inside the estate. They were a distraction. The sniper was the real threat. I heard the faint click of the rifle. I didn't think. I sprinted down the corridor so fast, my feet barely touched the ground. Adrian and his men were already engaged in a gunfight as more attackers poured in from different parts of the estate. Gunshots exploded through the night. Then I saw it. The sniper fired. The bullet tore through the air, heading straight for Adrian's chest. I slammed into him at full speed. Broken ribs could be fixed. A bullet through the chest couldn't. We hit the floor hard. The bullet tore into the wall behind us. "Stay down," I commanded. I grabbed the second gun from Adrian's belt and pushed myself up. Adrian stared at me, unsure of what had just happened. I didn't wait. I moved with the precision of a panther, too fast for human eyes to track. The sniper was already trying to reposition. I raised the weapon. I fired. Once. The man dropped. Silence followed. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breathing. Then gunfire erupted from the other side of the estate. Adrian was already on his feet, returning fire. I covered his blind spots. Anyone who aimed at him didn't get a second chance. Minutes later, everything went quiet. "All clear, boss," his lieutenant called through the earpiece. Adrian lowered his weapon. Then he turned toward me. We stared at each other. His chest rose and fell. "What the hell are you, Aziza?" I turned away and shrugged. "I saved your life, and that's what you ask me?" I started walking back inside. "Don't do that." He followed. His voice was sharper now. "I saw you. I didn't stop." "Saw me doing what?" "Moving like the wind." He stepped closer. "No human moves like that." I scoffed. "You're seeing things, Adrian. Aziza." "Adrian." I could feel him right behind me. "Are you a witch?" That made me stop. I turned around, then burst out laughing. "A witch?" "Yes." He narrowed his eyes. "Go to bed, Adrian. You're hallucinating." I started walking again. "Aziza." His voice sounded almost desperate. I kept going. He caught my arm. I immediately yanked it free. "Good night, Adrian." Then I hurried toward my bedroom before he could ask another question. I could feel his frustration, but I couldn't give him the answers he wanted. And for the first time, Adrian Blackwood was beginning to realize that his wife was hiding something far more dangerous than he could have imagined. I was at Blackridge Pride by dawn. Alpha Samuel was indeed testing my patience. His Pride members had been seen cultivating on our land, and his warriors had assaulted members of my Pride. I tolerated enough. This ended now. I'd been quiet for too long. We gathered in the square. I stepped forward. "You trespassed on my Pride's land." As if that wasn't enough, "Your warriors assaulted members of my Pride." Samuel sent me a smug look. "Then take it back." I stepped forward, gladly. Amara caught my arm. "Aziza." I glanced at her. "What?" "Don't kill him." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not promising anything." "That's exactly why I'm saying it." I turned back to Samuel. "Fine." His smile widened. "Let's see what kind of alpha you really are." He lunged. I didn't move, not until the last second. Then I leapt behind him. His claws sliced through empty air. He spun, too slow. I struck him across the chest. He flew backward and hit the ground hard. The warriors surrounding us fell silent. Samuel struggled back to his feet. I stood over him. One more move. That's all it would take. I could smell his fear. I looked into his eyes. "Yield." He stared at me. I pressed my foot against his chest. "Or this ends differently." His jaw clenched. Then he lowered his head. I yield. I stepped back. "Move your markers." He didn't answer. "Now." "You have my word." I turned away. "Good." I paused. "Because the next time you cross into my territory, there won't be a duel." I looked over my shoulder. "There will be a war." I returned to the estate just before noon. The moment I stepped through the front door, I knew something was wrong. Adrian was waiting for me. He stood in the middle of the sitting room, his arms folded across his chest. His expression was cold. I stopped. "What?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the remote and turned on the television. My eyes narrowed. A video began playing. I moved closer to the screen. There I was, standing in the Blackridge Pride Square. I watched myself challenge Samuel, then watched myself take him down. My jaw tightened. When the video ended, the room fell silent. I slowly turned toward Adrian. "You had me followed?" His expression didn't change. "You're my wife. I have every right to know where you go." I blinked at him. "You're unbelievable." Adrian lowered the remote onto the table. His eyes remained fixed on me. "How long were you planning to keep this from me?" I scoffed and folded my arms. "Like it's any of your business." His eyes hardened. "You're my business, Aziza." I held his gaze for a moment. Then I let out a bitter laugh. "How exactly did you want me to tell you?" I gestured toward myself. "Oh dear fake husband. You see, I'm a panther. And not just any panther, I'm an alpha." I shook my head. "You would have thought I'd gone mad." Adrian slowly shook his head. He stepped closer. "It all makes sense now." I raised an eyebrow. "What does?" "Your lack of fear." He paused in front of me. "You helped a complete stranger without hesitation. You married me even though you knew who I was." His gaze held mine. "Most people are afraid of me, Aziza." I shrugged. "Trust me, I've seen scarier things." Something almost like amusement flickered across his face. I didn't know what to make of it. So I turned and headed upstairs. Adrian followed. I walked into my bedroom and pulled a suitcase from the wardrobe. "What are you doing?" I ignored him and began packing. Adrian took a step closer. "Where are you going?" "Anywhere but here." His jaw tightened. "We have a contract." I paused, then looked over my shoulder. "I'm no longer interested." His brows drew together. "Why?" I tossed another item into the suitcase. "Did you really just ask me that?" Adrian opened his mouth, then closed it again. He genuinely looked confused. I let out a humorless laugh. "For one, you spied on me." I shoved another piece of clothing into the suitcase. "Two, now you know what I am." I turned away from him. "I don't feel safe around you anymore." Adrian's expression changed. "What do you mean by that?" I glanced back at him. "Oh, you know exactly what I mean." He shook his head. "No, I don't." I turned to face him fully. "You could decide to sell me one day. I'm worth a fortune." His jaw tightened. "Aziza." "Or you could use me for your mafia business." I turned back to the suitcase. "Or your enemies could come after me." I shoved the last piece of clothing inside and zipped it shut. "So either way, I'm not safe here." Adrian stared at me as if I'd slapped him. I grabbed the suitcase and headed for the door. He stepped in my path. I halted. "Move. Aziza." His voice was softer now. I tried to step around him. He moved with me. "I can't believe you think so poorly of me." He tried to catch my gaze, but I looked away and tightened my grip on the suitcase. "It's not what I think." I looked him directly in the eye. "It's what I know. I've heard how ruthless you are, and I'm not going to wait around to find out for myself." Adrian exhaled sharply. "Aziza." His voice was exasperated now. "I'd never do anything to hurt you." I raised an eyebrow. "And I'm supposed to believe that?" His expression hardened. "Because I don't hurt women or children." I scoffed. "Oh, how touching." I reached for the door handle. "Wait." My hand froze. I slowly turned around. "What?" Adrian stood behind me, frustrated, almost angry. But beneath it, there was something else. Something I couldn't quite place. He dragged a hand over his face. "I think I like you." My fingers remained wrapped around the door handle. I blinked at him. "What?" Adrian exhaled. "And I think I'd like to find out what's happening between us." I said nothing. He looked away for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "You see, I don't get attached to anyone." His voice was quieter now. He shoved his hands into his pockets. "I have too many enemies. Too many opportunists. Then his eyes found mine again. You're the one person I can let my guard down with. He shook his head. I don't know why. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He liked me. How? When? For the first time, I really looked at him, and I saw the exhaustion on his face, the weight he carried, the loneliness he'd hidden behind all that control. My fingers loosened around the suitcase handle. Then I let it fall to the floor. I walked toward him and hugged him tightly. Adrian's muscular arms wrapped around me, pulling me close. For a moment, we stayed like that, listening to each other's heartbeat. Then I looked up at him. Did you mean what you said? He nodded. I like you, Aziza. I'm not sure when it happened, but I truly do. His confession sent 1,000 butterflies fluttering through my stomach. Then I asked the one thing I hadn't wanted to mention, but I needed to know. That's not part of the contract, Adrian. I know. He brushed a hand over my hair. I leaned into his touch. Let's not talk about the contract right now. I nodded. Before I could blink, his lips met mine. The kiss was soft at first. Then it deepened, as though he'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. I stood there like a mannequin, completely unsure of what to do. This was my first kiss, and I was doing terribly. Adrian pulled back. Are you okay? I nodded. A soft smile touched his lips. If you don't want this to go any further, just let me know, okay? I nodded again. Then I kissed him back. I had no idea what I was doing. I simply followed his movements, slowly finding my rhythm. The rest of the night passed in a blur, and the next morning I found myself lying in Adrian's bed. I shut my eyes. Yesterday had actually happened. Then I opened them. A red stain caught my attention. Oh, God! I immediately shot up and reached for the bedsheet. The door opened. Adrian walked in carrying a tray of food. His eyes met mine, then dropped to the edge of the sheet in my hands. His gaze shifted to the stain. I immediately covered my face with my hands. Adrian placed the tray on the table and moved closer to the bed. Are you okay? He asked, concern filling his voice. Did you hurt yourself? I shook my head. Are you on your period? I shook my head again. His expression changed. Then carefully he asked, Did I hurt you last night? I shook my head. Then what is it? He stared at me for a moment. Then realization dawned. Oh, God. My hand slowly lowered. You were a virgin? I nodded. Why didn't you say something? I didn't want to spoil the mood. Adrian's brows drew together. You should have said something. I know. I lowered my gaze. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, please. Adrian's voice softened. I should have asked. You didn't do anything wrong, Adrian. I grabbed the bedsheet. Adrian reached for it. Leave that. I'll take care of it. Really, it's fine. I hurried toward the door with the sheet in my arms. Behind me, I heard Adrian sigh. I didn't turn around. I was far too embarrassed. I came out of the bathroom, showered and dressed, carrying a fresh set of sheets. Then I stopped. The bed was already made. I looked up. Adrian walked out of the bathroom, fully dressed. My eyes immediately dropped. You changed the sheets already? He nodded. Before I could say anything else, he took the sheets from my hands and gently guided me onto the bed. Then he placed the breakfast tray on my lap. Now eat. I made this English breakfast specially for you. Thank you. I kept my eyes on the tray. Aziza. Yes? Why won't you look at me? I picked at my food. I look at you all the time, Adrian. Prove it. I swallowed. Slowly, I lifted my head. My gaze met his. He smiled warmly. You don't have to be shy around me, Aziza. I nodded. No one ever taught me how to act the morning after. Adrian chuckled. I'm still me. Nothing's changed. I nodded again. I'm off to the office. If you need anything, just call me. Okay. He surprised me by leaning down and pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. Then he walked out. I sat there staring after him. Nothing had changed. And yet somehow, everything had. After I was done eating, I walked into the kitchen to wash the dishes and paused. A brand new mini fridge sat against the wall. Curious, I opened it, and I almost cried. I'm not a crier, never have been. But Adrian had remembered that I preferred water to anything else. Inside were rows of expensive bottled water, different brands neatly lined up. I shook my head in disbelief. He remembered. London's deadliest mafia boss actually remembered. By noon, flowers and chocolates had arrived, along with a brand new car. I stared at the keys in my hand. Adrian had officially lost his mind. What else was he going to send me next? A private jet? I chuckled. When Adrian returned that evening, I thanked him for the gifts, but I didn't accept the car. Why not? He asked. 1, I'm faster than this car. His eyebrows rose. And 2, I think you feel guilty. For what? I gave him a knowing look. You know exactly what. Adrian stared at me for a moment. You got me there. I folded my arms. So, I'm right? He sighed. Fine, you're right. I do feel guilty, but that's not why I bought you the car. Then why? Because you're my wife. His expression softened. And making your life easier is my priority. I stared at him for a moment. He sounded so sweet. If anyone saw him now, they wouldn't believe this was Adrian Blackwood, the mafia boss who ruled London's underworld. I almost chuckled, but managed to keep a straight face. Just accept it, please. It's my responsibility to keep you safe. I gave him a reassuring smile. That night was mutual, Adrian. His expression softened. You don't have to feel bad. I know. He gently squeezed my hand. I sighed. Fine. I'll accept the car. I threw my arms around him and kissed him. Adrian kissed me back before carefully setting me back on my feet. I think he keeps forgetting I'm a panther. I'm stronger than I look. He smiled. You're getting pretty good at this, he said, tucking a loose hair behind my ear. I felt my cheeks heat. He handed me the key. Give it a spin. I nodded and took it from him. I had barely taken a step toward my new car when the gate was forced open. It slammed against the wall. 3 members of my council stormed into the compound, their expressions ranging from disapproval to outright horror. So this is where you've been hiding, Elder Ada yelled. I turned. They shot daggers at me with their eyes. Abomination. Gabriel, the head of the council, glanced between Adrian and me. I folded my arms. What are you guys doing here? You're such a disgrace, Aziza. Elder Solomon stalked towards me, pointing a bony finger in my face. So, because I refused to attend the council meeting, you decided to come here? I asked. Elder Ada shook her head in disappointment. Is this how an alpha is supposed to lead? Her eyes flicked toward Adrian. Kissing a man like this? You behave like a loose woman, not an alpha. I glanced at Adrian, who remained surprisingly calm. I won't have you insult me in my own home, she sneered. Your home is in the Pride Lands, not here. She glowered at Adrian before her gaze returned to me. Do you think your mate would be happy if he knew you were kissing a mere mortal? And worse, a mafia lord? I folded my arms tighter. I won't have you disrespect my husband. Do you want to start a war? Elder Mike stepped forward. The Redwood Pack is vicious. You know what they're capable of. They will spill blood if they find out. I looked at Adrian. His face had hardened. You're an alpha. Start acting like it. Elder Mike's voice grew stern. Your pride's safety comes first. And by being with this man, that safety is no longer guaranteed. I lifted my chin. I'll say this once. I choose who I mate with. Redwood Pack can do their worst. I'm not afraid of them. Aziza? Elder Mike shook his head. Adrian's jaw tightened. I'm very capable of protecting my wife. Elder Mike scoffed. You're in danger, human. Adrian's eyes narrowed. I'll be waiting. His voice remained calm. Elder Mike turned to me. Think with your head, not your heart. This man is a bad influence, and this won't end well. Enough. I looked at my council members. I've said my piece. I gestured toward the gate. I'm not coming home. You can leave now. Elder Gabriel's expression darkened. Very well. Then be prepared to forfeit your title as Alpha. I glared at him. Your brother will replace you. I laughed. I'd love to see him try. You have 24 hours, Aziza. His eyes blazed. Come home or step down as Alpha. And with that, they left. I turned to Adrian. His face was unreadable. As I walked toward him, he turned and strode inside, his steps heavy with anger. I couldn't understand what had made him so upset, so I hurried after him. Inside the sitting room, I called after him, but he didn't respond. He kept walking. Adrian, nothing. I'm sorry about the council. I didn't know they were coming. I hoped that would lighten the mood. It didn't. Finally, he stopped and turned. His eyes held a deep hurt I didn't understand. It's not about your council. Then what's wrong? He hesitated, as if whatever he was about to say would cost him something. You have a mate? I stared at him, unsure why that mattered. And you never bothered to tell me. I didn't think it was necessary. We're married, Aziza. On paper, Adrian. We're married on paper. Pain flashed across his face, but it quickly disappeared. So, you're saying you don't love me? The word made me freeze. Love? Do I love Adrian? He looked at me, waiting for an answer. I didn't know what to say, so I asked the only thing that came to mind. What does love have to do with anything, Adrian? His expression tightened. We signed a contract, I reminded him. I hated that I had to keep doing that. He made the rules. Now he was making me suffer for them. Adrian paused. What happens when it ends? I threw my hands up in frustration. I can't live here forever. Something in my words seemed to break through the last of his composure. He looked at me, hurt and angry, like I'd just told him I was leaving tomorrow. Then he turned and walked away. Adrian, I called, exasperated. He didn't slow down until he disappeared from the sitting room. Then I heard a door slam. I sank onto the sofa, utterly confused. I wasn't sure how we'd gotten here, and I had no idea how to fix it. Later that night, I went to Adrian's bedroom to check on him. He was sitting on the edge of the bed when I walked in. Hi, I said, trying to gauge his mood. He didn't respond. His attention remained fixed on his phone. I sighed. Fine. Be like that then. What do you want, Aziza? He asked without looking up. At least he's talking to me now. That's progress. I took a slow breath. There's something I haven't told you. His attention remained on his phone. I ignored him and continued. You see, that night when I stopped your wedding? His head lifted. Good. I finally had his attention. I wasn't just trying to save that woman, I admitted. I was running away. He dropped his phone onto the bed and stood immediately. Running away? Worry flashed across his face. From what? I exhaled slowly. The elders were trying to force me to marry a man twice my age. I swallowed. My parents had been buried the day before, and that same night was supposed to be my coronation as the next Alpha. Adrian's expression softened. But to take my place as Alpha, I had to be married. Oh, baby. The words should have felt strange coming from him. Instead, they felt right. That's not all. His brows drew together. There's more? I nodded. He took my hand, led me to the bed and sat down, pulling me gently onto his lap. Even though I was meant to inherit the title by birthright, I still had to fight the other contenders for it. I looked away. Just because I'm a woman. Adrian brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. That's unfair. I gave a small nod. If they'd succeeded in marrying me to someone they chose, they would have controlled me through him. I'd have been Alpha in name only. I'm so sorry, Aziza. His voice was barely above a whisper. No one should have to go through that. I rested my forehead against his chest. Only then did I realize I was crying. Warm tears slipped silently down my cheeks. Funny. I hadn't cried when my parents died. I hadn't cried when the council forced me to attend my own coronation, or what was supposed to be my wedding. But somehow, being held by this dangerous man broke something open inside me. Adrian wrapped his arms around me and kissed the top of my head. "It's okay," he murmured. "You have me now." His voice hardened. "And I promise no one will ever hurt you again." He paused. "I'll kill them." I laughed through my tears. "Please don't kill anyone for my sake, Adrian. I'm not making any promises." I smiled against his chest. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Adrian broke the silence. "I'm sorry about earlier." I looked up. "I was a jerk." "Yeah," I said, "you were." The corner of his mouth lifted. "And you're still here." I nodded. I didn't know exactly when it had happened. Somewhere along the way. This dangerous mafia boss had become my home. "I think it's because I love you, Adrian." The room fell silent. Did I really just say that? I had, and strangely, it wasn't nearly as terrifying as I'd imagined. I was tired of worrying about what would happen when the contract ended. Tired of wondering whether we had a future. For once, I wanted to live in the moment. Adrian stared at me. "Did you just say what I think you said?" I nodded. A slow smile spread across his face. "That makes two of us." I raised an eyebrow. "You know, you could actually say the words, you cheeky mafia boss." He laughed. "I love you, Aziza." Then he kissed me. The next morning, I woke up in Adrian's arms. Once again, we were tangled together beneath the covers. I shifted slightly, intending to slip out of bed, but Adrian tightened his arms around me. "Why don't we stay here all day?" I smiled. "No mafia business?" "There's always mafia business." He pulled me a little closer. "But it can wait today." I snuggled against him. Then reality came crashing back. "I need to go home." His smile faded. "The council won't stop until I deal with this mate situation." I turned to face him. I ran from my coronation. I ran from my pride. I ran from the marriage they were forcing on me. I smiled softly, and somehow I found you. His eyes warmed. "You think that was fate?" I shrugged. "Maybe." I was running away from the life they chose for me. I intertwined my fingers with his, and somehow found the man I wanted to choose for myself. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he squeezed my hand. "Then go home." I blinked. "What?" "Go home, Aziza." His voice was calm, but unwavering. "Face your council. Face your pride. You're their alpha. Don't let anyone take that from you." I searched his face. "And what about you?" "I'll be right here." His gaze never left mine. "And if anyone tries to hurt you..." His jaw tightened. "I don't care who they are." "No one lays a finger on my wife." I rolled my eyes. "You're impossible." "Probably." Despite myself, I smiled. Then I rested my head against his chest. For the first time. I wasn't running. I was going home. And this time, I wasn't alone. Adrian. A few hours after Aziza left, I couldn't sit still. Something wasn't right. I'd called her several times. No answer. "Do you think she's in trouble, boss?" my lieutenant asked. I looked up. They never wanted her to become Alpha. My jaw tightened. When they couldn't stop her outright, they found other ways to keep her from taking her rightful place. I thought back to everything Aziza had told me. They underestimated her. My gaze hardened. She survived every obstacle they put in her way. My lieutenant studied me for a moment. "So you think she's walking into a trap?" I nodded once. "Get the men." I stood. "And bring the bronze bullets." He didn't question me. He simply nodded and left to carry out my orders. I pulled out my phone and called Aziza again. Straight to voicemail. A cold knot settled in my chest. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. "Hold on, baby, I'm coming." The ancient church doors burst open with a deafening bang. Every head turned. The council, the pride, the elders conducting the ceremony, and me. I stood at the altar in a wedding dress. But what caught my attention was the man walking through the doors. Adrian. His eyes immediately found mine. I saw the moment his expression changed. His gaze dropped to the bronze chains wrapped around my wrists. Ancient runes had been etched into the metal. Runes specifically forged to suppress Alpha Panthers. They weren't ordinary bronze. They had been enchanted over generations to weaken shifters. Adrian's face hardened. I wasn't fighting. I couldn't. My fearless husband had finally found me. And for the first time, I saw something I had never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Not for himself. For me. Standing beside me was Peter, the man the council had chosen for me. He wore an arrogant smirk, as though he had finally broken me. The high priestess raised her voice. "Do you, Aziza?" "That's my wife." Adrian's voice echoed through the church. A murmur erupted among the crowd. My head snapped toward him. "Adrian!" My eyes widened in horror. "No!" I shook my head frantically. "Please go back. This place isn't safe for you." But he didn't even slow down. His dark eyes remained fixed on mine. Warriors from the Pride moved to intercept him. Behind him, his men spread out, weapons drawn. Adrian's voice remained calm. "If anyone lays a hand on my wife," he raised his pistol, "they die." My heart pounded, then suddenly a warrior seized me from behind and pressed a bronze dagger against my temple. "Take one more step." "Adrian, don't!" He didn't hesitate. Bang! The bullet struck the warrior straight through the heart. He crumpled to the floor before he even realized he'd been shot. His weapon slipped from his lifeless hand. Then, a deafening roar echoed through the church. I turned just in time to see Zechariah shift into a massive black panther. He launched himself at Adrian. "Adrian!" Adrian rolled out of the way, coming up on one knee. His pistol was already raised. Then I caught the unmistakable scent. Bronze. My heart stopped. "Adrian, no!" Tears filled my eyes. "Please!" I stepped forward, but the chains held me back. "He's my brother!" Adrian's finger rested against the trigger. Zechariah stalked toward him, teeth bared. The entire church held its breath. For one suspended heartbeat, no one moved. Then, crack! A bolt of golden lightning tore through the roof. The earth trembled. Every candle went out. The stained glass windows exploded outward. An overwhelming pressure filled the sanctuary. Every panther instinctively fell to their knees. Even Zechariah froze. I felt the bronze chains around my wrists begin to glow. Then, snap! They shattered. The broken pieces fell to the floor. Golden light swirled around me, filling the church with a warmth unlike anything I had ever felt. A graceful figure stepped from the light. The panther goddess. Silence fell. Her gaze swept across the church before settling on the council. "Who gave you permission to chain my chosen alpha?" No one answered. The oldest elder immediately fell to his knees. "Great goddess, we were preserving tradition. You were preserving your power." Her voice shook the walls. "You twisted sacred law for your own gain." She turned toward me. "My daughter." My breath caught. "You were chosen before your first breath." Her gaze swept across the council. No council, no elder, no priest can undo what the gods have already decreed. She faced the pride. "Hear my judgment." The church became deathly still. Aziza is the rightful alpha. She always was. She always will be. Lightning flashed again. From this day forward, anyone who seeks to steal her birthright shall answer to the heavens." The altar split in two beneath another thunderous strike. Terror spread through the council. Then the goddess turned toward Adrian. "You crossed kingdoms for her. You walked willingly into the den of those who would kill you. You came knowing you might never leave." Adrian met her gaze without flinching. "She's my wife." A faint smile touched the goddess's lips. "Yes." Her gaze shifted between us. "And because your hearts chose one another freely, no council shall separate what destiny has joined." She looked at me, then at Adrian. "If your love is true, join your hands." Without hesitation, Adrian reached for me. I placed my hand in his. The moment our fingers intertwined, golden light burst from our joined hands and surged through the church. The heavens answered. The goddess smiled. "Let all bear witness. What the gods have blessed, no one shall ever tear apart." The light slowly faded. The corrupt elders remained on their knees. The warriors lowered their weapons. Even the wind outside had fallen silent. A new Alpha had been recognized, not by the council, but by the heavens themselves. The Panther goddess turned to me one final time. "My daughter," I lifted my chin. "You are Alpha." The goddess disappeared in a burst of golden light. Silence remained. Then I turned toward the elders. Elder Gabriel slowly raised his head. "Aziza." I held up a hand. "Enough." My voice echoed through the church. For years they had spoken for me, made decisions for me, tried to control me. But that ended today. I looked toward the pride warriors. Take them to the boundary. The elders stared at me in shock. "What?" I hardened my gaze. "They are no longer welcome on these lands." Elder Gabriel scrambled to his feet. "You can't do this. We are the council." I stared him down. "Not anymore." The warriors stepped forward. "Aziza, think carefully." "I have." My voice was calm. "Take them away." The warriors seized the corrupt elders and dragged them toward the church doors. "This is your mistake," Elder Gabriel shouted as he struggled against their grip. "You'll regret this." I didn't even flinch. At the entrance I delivered my final command. None of them are ever to set foot on these lands again. The great church doors slammed shut behind them. Silence. I finally exhaled. Then I felt a hand slip into mine. "Adrian." I looked at him. His eyes softened. "My Alpha." A smile slowly touched my lips. "My husband." And for the first time, no one stood between us. Who knew being an Alpha came with so many responsibilities? And who thought it was a wise idea to make a 20-year-old the leader of an entire pride? I almost forgot. The Panther goddess. I'm just kidding. There were pride matters to handle, meetings, ceremonies, disputes between clans, training, decisions that affected hundreds of Panthers. I had spent months running from the throne. Now that I finally had it, I couldn't simply walk away, which meant Adrian had a decision to make. One evening, we stood together on the balcony of the castle, looking across the vast lands of my pride. "You know you don't have to stay here," I said. Adrian glanced at me. "I know. You have your own empire. I do. Your business. Your men. Your estate." He looked amused. "Are you trying to get rid of me, Alpha?" I rolled my eyes. "I'm being serious." "So am I." He turned toward me. "Your life is here now." I nodded. "I can't leave my pride." "I know. And you can't abandon everything you've built in London." "I know that too." I frowned. "Then what are we going to do?" Adrian stepped closer. "We stay here." I stared at him. "You?" "Me." He shrugged as though it were the simplest decision in the world. "I can run most of my business from here. When I need to be in London, I'll go." I blinked. "You'd do that?" "Of course." He reached for my hand. "You're my wife." His thumb brushed across my knuckles. "You're the Alpha now. Your people need you." I stared at him. This was the same man who had once tried to convince me that our marriage was nothing more than a contract. Now he was willing to leave his world behind to stand beside me in mine. "What about your estate?" A slow smile spread across his face. "We'll keep it." "For what?" "Our holiday home." I laughed. "Our holiday home? Why not?" He pulled me closer. "Sometimes we'll come back to London." I raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes?" "Fine. Whenever you miss the city." "I don't miss the city." "Whenever you miss the expensive water in my fridge." I gasped. "That was one time." He laughed. I shook my head. "You know, for a mafia boss, you're surprisingly good at this husband thing." "I'm getting pretty good at it." I smiled. Then my expression softened. "Thank you." Adrian's smile faded. "For what?" "For choosing to stay." He looked at me as though the answer should have been obvious. There was never a choice. He lifted my hand and kissed my knuckles. "Wherever you are, Aziza." His eyes held mine. "That's where I want to be." My heart squeezed. I leaned into him. For the first time, I understood something. I hadn't lost my freedom by becoming alpha. I had finally found a man who wanted to stand beside me without asking me to give it up. But I needed to know something. Something that had been bothering me ever since I first saw those scars. I reached for Adrian's hand and looked into his eyes. "Those scars. Adrian." His expression changed. "The ones on your chest. How did you get them?" I felt his hand twitch beneath mine. For a moment, I thought he would pull away. But this time, he didn't. He sighed. "I was bullied by my superiors in the army." My eyes widened. "What?" "They didn't just target me. I watched them do it to other junior soldiers too." My heart tightened. "And no one did anything?" He shook his head. "No one." His jaw clenched. I hated watching it happen and knowing I couldn't stop it. I squeezed his hand. "Adrian." After I left, I made myself a promise. He finally looked at me. I would never be powerless again. My heart ached. "So you became a mafia lord?" He nodded. "I wanted enough power to protect myself." His eyes softened. "And the people who matter to me." I stared at him. The feared mafia lord of London's underworld. I pulled him into a tight hug. His arms immediately wrapped around me, holding me even tighter. "Thank you for telling me." He nodded against my hair, and I held him a little tighter. The next morning, I was helping the healers treat an injured young panther when I felt something strange. A strong kick. I froze. My hand immediately went to my stomach. What the hell was that? The healer beside me stared at me. Then her eyes widened. "Alpha." I looked at her. "What?" She slowly smiled. "You're with child." I stared at her. Then I looked around. Every panther in the room was kneeling. My eyes widened. "What?" I looked down at my stomach, then back at her. "You're sure?" She laughed softly, very sure. My heart began to race. Pregnant. I was pregnant. With Adrian's child. A tear slipped down my cheek. Then another. I didn't even bother wiping them away. I turned and ran. I found Adrian in his study. He was standing beside his desk holding a piece of paper. I slowed down. I recognized it immediately. Our marriage contract. The contract that had started all of this. The contract that was supposed to end after 1 year. We had been married for 8 months. Why was he holding it? "What are you doing?" Adrian looked up. His expression softened when he saw me. "Nothing, babe." I stepped closer. "That's our contract." "I know." He glanced down at the paper, then back at me. "I think it's time we made this permanent." I stared at him. "Really?" He nodded. Then he tore the contract in half. My mouth fell open. He tore it again, and again, until the pieces fell from his hands. The contract that had once defined our marriage was now nothing but scraps of paper. Adrian stepped toward me. No more expiration dates. My heart squeezed. I smiled. No more contracts? No more contracts. He reached for me. You're stuck with me. I laughed. I think I've already figured that out. His smile faded slightly as he studied my face. Everything all right, babe? I nodded. Then I placed a hand over my stomach. I have something to tell you. His eyes immediately dropped to my hand. What? I'm pregnant. For a moment, Adrian didn't move. He just stared at me. Then his face broke into the biggest smile I had ever seen. You're pregnant? I nodded. With your child. He crossed the distance between us in an instant, his arms wrapped around me. Then he lifted me off the ground. Adrian! He laughed. How far along are you? I shook my head. I don't know. The healer only just confirmed it. Before I could say another word, Adrian had already reached for his phone. Adrian, you're seeing a doctor. I don't need, you're seeing a doctor. I rolled my eyes. Yes, boss. A short while later, a doctor arrived. After examining me, he stared at the results in disbelief. 7 months. My jaw dropped. 7? He nodded slowly. You're 7 months pregnant. Adrian stared at him. How is that possible? The doctor looked equally confused. You're barely showing. I shrugged. Some women don't show much. It was the best explanation I could give him. There was no way I was going to tell him that panthers carried differently. The doctor continued his examination. The baby is perfectly healthy. I exhaled in relief. That's all that matters. He smiled. However, I recommend you avoid anything too strenuous or stressful. I almost laughed. Adrian glanced at me. What? Nothing. The doctor gave me a stern look. I'm serious. You need to rest. I nodded obediently. Of course. He left. The moment the door closed, Adrian turned toward me. You think this is funny? I tried not to smile. A little. Why? Because I've spent the last few weeks training new warriors. His eyes widened. Excuse me? After we got rid of the old ones, someone had to train the replacements. Aziza. And I've been doing obstacle courses with them. Aziza. I didn't know I was pregnant. Adrian stared at me. I smiled innocently. He shook his head. You're impossible. You're the one who married me. Apparently, I wasn't thinking clearly. I laughed. Adrian pulled me into his arms. His hand settled gently over my stomach. His expression softened. Then he looked down at me. You're officially Aziza Blackwood now. I smiled. Am I? He nodded. No contracts. He kissed my forehead. No expiration dates. His hand moved gently over our unborn child. You're my wife. And your weakness, I teased. He smiled. My greatest weakness? I frowned. That's not good. It's perfect. He looked into my eyes. The world knows me as a deadly mafia lord. His thumb brushed gently over my cheek. But with you, I'm just a man. A man in love, I added. His smile widened. Exactly. I narrowed my eyes. Your enemies shouldn't know that. Oh, they should. Why? Because I know you'd end them before they even got close to me. I laughed. You're the Mafia Boss, not me. You're the alpha. His expression turned serious. An apex predator. He leaned closer. They won't stand a chance. I laughed and leaned up to kiss him. The moment our lips met. Kick. We both froze. I pulled away. Adrian stared at my stomach. Was that the baby? I nodded. Another kick. Adrian's eyes widened. I laughed. Looks like someone agrees with you. He placed his hand against my stomach. Smart kid. I rolled my eyes. Don't start. He smiled. Then he kissed me again. And this time I knew. There would be no contract, no expiration date, no running away, just Adrian, me, our child, and the life we had chosen together.